Hello, everyone. Allison Raposa here, and I have a very important question. In today's day and age, filled with constant turmoil and utter chaos that seems to be unfolding in front of our very eyes every other day, there's now a basic human need to escape the daily burdens of our reality in favor of searching for something reminiscent of simpler times. But how do we do that? Think about it for a moment. Back to when you were a child, and the only real responsibilities you may have had were mundane chores like setting the table. Instead, our days were filled pretending that knights atop valiant steeds were charging off into battle against a fire breathing mystical dragon deep in a dark cavern with sparkling jewels and gold along the walls, or when princesses suited up and picked up swords and dashed in to join the fight protecting their people. These epic adventures carried us through a time in our lives without real responsibilities, and many of us look back upon them fondly. Silverstone Castle is looking to give families and individuals that kind of joy again, despite several setbacks they have faced. Setbacks are something that we as college students can all relate to. We're all actively working towards a goal, whether that be to obtain an associate's degree or obtaining college credit. Think of all the hard work, the strain, the stress that we have poured into this goal. Imagine if all that dedication was met with setback after setback. Delays in financial aid, questioning whether or not Mass Reconnect is going to continue to be funded, graduation hiccups. Just imagine the utter dismay and the absolute frustration which we would respond with after all of that hard work was called into question, if something was preventing us from achieving our final goal. In addition to being a college student like yourselves, I'm a resident of Bristol County. I work for the local state government, as well as I'm preparing to take my real estate licensing exam. Now, both occupations rely heavily on having a thorough understanding of the cities and towns that make up Bristol County. Statistics, including potential revenue and beneficial impacts for local neighborhoods, are all considered crucial to both occupations. I'd like to take a few moments to highlight some of what we know to be many issues forcing an uphill battle for any small business looking to gain their footing. These issues include chasing an extensive number of permits required by law and facing some of the lasting effects from the COVID-19 pandemic. For those of us local to the Bristol County area, I'm sure that at one point or another in the last 5 years, you have either heard or physically driven by the Silverstone Castle, a medieval castle standing proudly at 87,000 square feet in Swansea, Massachusetts. According to Silverstone Castle owner Joseph Estrella, and reiterated by their social media posts of July 2025, one of the most critical issues responsible for the constant postponements of opening Silverstone Castle has been the permitting and licensing process, and zoning permits took an extensive amount of time and were in response to initial pushback from the town over concerns about the size of the castle and the effects primarily on local traffic. Now, according to mass.gov, building permits have expiration dates and they must be obtained based on architectural changes and recertified prior to expiration. Otherwise, businesses are forced to file from the point of initiation. Businesses are also subject to town inspections and their schedules. Failure to accommodate prior to the deadline being met by said permit causes the business to start from square one. Some of the other things that Joseph Estrella's team has been facing was public water access. It was almost a year-long delay as parts of Swansea, Mass were restructured. It goes without saying that without public water access, which there was a pre-existing line from the previous business that was in the castle's place before. However, the sheer size of this castle is just beyond anything that prior business could have accommodated. As if the burdens created by the permitting and licensing process and water access weren't enough. One of the things that Joseph Estrella has repeatedly mentioned in various interviews throughout the years was the impact that COVID 19 had directly upon his business because of his timing. He obtained the land in 2019, he began the zoning process, and the nation shut down. While waiting for that, the unique, detailed, intricate pieces that he had ordered from all over the world to furnish his castle lost workers. In some cases, these losses pushed deadlines back for an entire year. So, despite these significant issues and delays, here's what Joseph Estrella and the team over at Silverstone Castle have been doing to push forward. According to team representatives, they are pushing hard in what they're describing the final home stretch as far as the finalized licensing and permits required in order to start planning what they are describing as a lavish grand opening celebration. They have remained diligent with paperwork and maintained open availability for final inspections, and they have remained in constant communication with the final few vendors who are holding unique one-of-a-kind furnishings. With that, as our quest comes to an end, I want to remind you that small businesses are quite literally the backbone of our country. They face numerous challenges even before they open their doors to the general public. They must contend with a public that doesn't always understand their vision, a permit and licensing process that's designed to be inconvenient and cumbersome, waiting endlessly for necessary provisions and battling against staffing shortages that create a domino effect with regards to obtaining goods with which just to function. Thank you for listening, and I hope to one day run into you, fighting dragons and enjoying a good ale at the Silverstone Castle.